former President Trump may be considering accepting the Speaker mantle after all. The Messenger's Mark Caputo reported that Trump is discussing whether to visit Republicans on Capitol Hill as they consider a new Speaker. The former president reportedly wants to end the McCarthy-Gates feud and focus on fighting Biden instead, but is also entertaining becoming Speaker himself on an interim basis for a few months. This, as some members continue to call for the GOP frontrunner to step in.
If you missed it, here's Trump's response when he was first asked about becoming the new Speaker.
A lot of people have asked me about it. I'm focused. You know, we're leading. I don't know you. I'm sure you don't read too much in the papers, but we're leading by like 50 points for president. You know, my focus is totally on that. If I can help them during the process, I would do it. But we have some great people in the Republican Party that could do a great job as Speaker. A lot of people have been talking about Speaker. All I can say is we'll do whatever's best for the country and for the Republican Party. We have some great people. We just want to say we have some great people.
I'm going to ask you what I asked some of my other co-hosts earlier this week. Do you think it's good for Trump politically to be Speaker?
I would say no, merely for the reason that whoever is the Republican Speaker of the House becomes the most hated person generally in Republican politics. I feel like if he follows in the footsteps of the Republican speakers before him, that would not be good politically for him. He doesn't need any more of a profile. He's already arguably the most high-profile person in the country. He's got these 4 trials that are happening all at once. He's got everything else going on. His poll numbers are through the roof against his fellow Republicans in this primary. There's nothing for him to do there other than potentially, as some have talked about, sort of theoretically, Trump overseeing the impeachment of Joe Biden in the House of Representatives, which would, I will say, make for incredible television and be something unlike anything we've ever seen before. But that it doesn't help him get any closer to being the president. Although I guess if he impeaches Joe Biden and then the Senate by some weird turn of events actually removes him from office, then that would clear the field for him. So that could be beneficial, but that's very much a pigs flying thing. But I will say in 2023, saying when pigs fly this will happen means it's probably about 10 minutes away. So
it's bacon the clock. Yeah, I tend to agree. Although for a normal person, I would say if you're running an outsider campaign, it's hard doing that when you've already been president. And it's especially hard doing that when you're standing there in a suit and tie with a gavel in your hand, administering over a chamber of Congress. But Trump isn't anyone else. And he tends to look more outsidery when thrown in stark contrast with the people who are around him. And so there's a world where he suddenly just looks like a bull in a china shop, and we're rooting for him to break some things that need to be broken. I think probably the best case scenario for him is posturing like he wants to be Speaker, claiming the limelight, without actually making any moves toward being Speaker. Although I am fascinated logistically by what all of these Congress members would do, all these Republican House members would do if forced into a situation where they have to do a round of voting about Donald Trump. Because it's one thing to cross Kevin McCarthy. It's one thing rather to defend Kevin McCarthy, not against Donald Trump, or defend like the establishment position against Matt Gaetz. It's another thing to do it against someone who really does have the ability to make or break their fates in their elections all around the country. The entire Republican Party has been in the thrall of Donald Trump for like 5 years now.
Yeah.
So it does kind of feel like if he were to run, if he's on the ballot, if someone nominates him, who's going to not vote for him?
Well, and I think that's the difference between what the former president has been saying, talking about, I'm interested in what's best for the country. I want to do what's best for Republicans. I want to end this fight, is very different from him saying, I'm going to be the next Speaker of the House of Representatives and y'all are going to vote for me, because it's taken the pressure off. And in the fight back in January, I think there were at least 2 rounds of balloting where Trump was not officially nominated, but somebody just said, I'd vote for Donald Trump. And he, of course, posted about even members of the House want me to run their chamber, blah, blah, blah. But it's very different from what Trump is saying now versus him saying now. If somebody or he on his own decides that the best thing for him is to be Speaker of the House, I think a situation like that would not be too far flung, because again, if somebody convinces him that the best thing he could do right now is to be the Speaker of the House due to I'm not sure what the fringe benefit would be of being in terrifyingly for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris in the line of succession, should anything happen to either or both of them. But just the situation, unless there's a fringe benefit that benefits him in all of these court cases, it doesn't seem that likely. But again, having him in the line of succession would do something for Democrats, and I think that would be probably just supercharged turnout, but maybe not, because they're worried that the alternative is not any better, and that might put it in even more stark contrast. If it's Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Donald Trump, that might be the ticket to a third-party victory right there.
I don't want to read in too much to what the hip hop community tells us about what voters are going to be up to, but there is a little bit of a little scandal going on because a young female rapper who I'm too old to really know anything about has been making waves because she has like a pro-Trump lyric in her song, and there is this trend of Black voters and certain other constituency groups like young voters who historically have voted Democrat disproportionately, and the Democratic Party really needs to win, vocalizing discontent with the Democratic Party. I saw yet another organizer from Georgia tweeting about how frustrated she was that they went out and knocked doors, partly because of all the promises, the $2,000 checks, the student debt cancellation. There's large HBCUs in Atlanta. All of these things were influencing the turnout, and then none of it happened. Mm-hmm. And she tweeted something along the lines of, so I guess the Democratic Party is just going to throw us under the bus and expect the organizers here to pick up the slack like we did last time. I don't know if it's going to work that way. They're also very angry about Cop City and the way the Democrats have all aligned in a pro-cop position, seemingly to advance some financial interests that come to some folks from certain big events coming to the city. And so, I don't know. It's not looking good. And honestly, I have no interest. I'm not a Republican. I don't have any interest in Republicans winning. But I think a lot of voters are torn between feeling really bent over the barrel by the Democratic Party and are really frustrated by the lack of accountability. And they're between that rock and the hard place of, well, what does it mean for a conservative to get elected? And at a certain point, I think reason goes out the window. The vote blew no matter who people want to say, well, obviously it's going to be worse under Trump. Mehdi Hassan, we saw in an earlier segment, is tweeting, well, Trump's not offering you any student debt cancellation, so be happy with these scraps that Biden is throwing you. Yeah. But at a certain point, people's dignity kicks in. And I remember Trump voters saying this back in 2016. Obama to Trump voters, when asked why they voted for Obama, they would say things like, well, Hillary Clinton isn't even pretending to respect us. Yeah, Donald Trump might be lying to us about his ability to bring the factories back or whatever, but Hillary Clinton isn't even pretending to respect us. And sometimes that level of disrespect drives voter decisions, and perhaps not even wrongly so. At a certain point, when is the accountability, when is the onus on the Democratic Party to stop punching its voters in the proverbial face? And that's why they lose. Yeah. At what point is it on them and not on the voters that abandoned the Democratic Party if Republicans actually win? Yeah.
I think there was maybe the most real questioning of that question of when do we stop punching our voters in the face after 2016, because obviously to the outside people who weren't aware of how toxic the Clintons were and how, nobody actually likes them, Democrat, Republican, or otherwise, the people who just kind of had the basic D versus R understanding, they were like, whoa, this is surprising. This supposedly perfect candidate who is a senator and a first lady and whatever, historic election that should have happened didn't. What happened here? But for everybody else, it was like, okay, yeah, nobody likes her. You'd think that they would have learned, but as we talked about in the student loan conversation, Joe Biden didn't learn, and this is all just as terrible. And the thing that people, I think, fundamentally misunderstood in 2016 and seemingly with Joe Biden continue to misunderstand on the Democrat side of things is why Donald Trump was so popular with the Republican base in places where he would be on paper the most unrelatable, out-of-touch person in the world, but you had him taking his helicopter to the Iowa State Fair and giving kids who have never ridden on an airplane, let alone been as far as Des Moines, rides on his helicopter and showing them what the world looks like from that point of view. And everybody loves that. And it's like, how is this man, who again was the host of The Apprentice, Celebrity Apprentice, has all these towers with the obnoxious Trump on it that everybody supposedly hates, gold toilets, all this stuff. How is this guy relating in a way to people in Iowa who theoretically have absolutely nothing in common for him apart from maybe loving Lee Greenwood music. That is like on paper the only thing that makes sense, but the difference is just the realness of his connection that he forged with people that again shocked everyone, because not only was he running against Hillary Clinton, who's a horrible candidate and a horrible person, but was running as somebody who actually connected with people and wanted to understand where they were. And I think, talking about it's hard to be an outsider the longer you're in Washington, being true. And I hope for Trump, the people in Trump campaign are hoping that Donald Trump still has that bond with people and is that relatable, and people still feel like he's fighting for them and understands them, even though it just makes no sense from like a political, ideological background. Like, why should this guy who invited Hillary Clinton to his wedding, who was pro-choice until recently, all these things,
and who didn't enact populist or pro-labor policies when he was in office?
Right. How does this man still relate to us? But then again, you have him, whatever he said since the fact, he is the man who ended Roe. And that is, again, because he took his helicopter to Iowa and people trusted him when he said, I'm going to, put conservative, originalist, whatever you want to call it, justices on the Supreme Court, and we're going to end this. Now he might have regrets about it because of the political blowback that some see that decision as causing.
Yeah.
But he is the man who literally had theoretically nothing in common with American voters, especially faith-based voters. And yet he came in and delivered what is the biggest win for the religious right since it started.
That's difficult too, because most Republicans aren't the religious right. And Trump, the magic of Trump is that he did put those wheels in motion, re-ending Roe, but also was smart enough to know that he shouldn't try to own that decision too hard. And he's like, me personally, abortions, who hasn't been there, right? And in Donald Trump's words, at least. Anyway. That does it for us today. Spencer will be back with you tomorrow with Jessica Burbank for Rising Fridays. Thank you for your service, Spencer.
So good to be back.
It's really fun to talk with you today. And Robbie, that ne'er-do-well, will be back with me next Tuesday. The dynamic duo reunited after he's been thinking of Rome, if not the Roman Empire, for the last 2 weeks. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any content. And those of you who like to listen while you're on the move, know you can find us anywhere where you find podcasts. All right, take care.